What if the reason you can't focus, can't get out of bed, can't reply to messages, can't feel motivated anymore, isn't because you're lazy? What if your mind and body are simply exhausted? A lot of people call themselves lazy when they're actually experiencing burnout. And psychologically, burnout is dangerous because it slowly convinces you that your exhaustion is a personal failure. So instead of resting, you shame yourself. You compare yourself to people online. You force productivity. You ignore your emotional needs. And eventually, even simple tasks start feeling overwhelming. Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like endless scrolling, emotional numbness, brain fog, losing excitement for things you once loved, or feeling tired no matter how much you sleep. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 7 major signs you're burned out, not lazy. And by the end, you may finally understand what your mind has been trying to tell you.
Sign 1. Everything feels exhausting. The first sign of burnout is this. Even small tasks feel mentally heavy. Not impossible, just exhausting. Replying to a message feels draining. Taking a shower feels like effort. Opening your laptop feels overwhelming. And then guilt appears. You think, why am I struggling to do basic things? But burnout changes the brain's relationship with energy and motivation. Psychologists explain that chronic stress keeps your nervous system overloaded for too long. Your brain stops operating efficiently because it's constantly trying to survive pressure, expectations, emotional tension, and mental fatigue. So your mind begins conserving energy. That's why even simple responsibilities can suddenly feel enormous. Lazy people usually avoid effort because they don't care. Burned out people care deeply, but feel emotionally and mentally unable to function normally anymore. That difference matters. Sign 2, you feel numb, not sad. A lot of people think burnout looks like crying constantly, but often, burnout feels like nothing. No excitement, no motivation, no emotional connection. You stop looking forward to things. The hobbies you loved feel empty. Music doesn't hit the same. Conversations feel forced. You're not always deeply sad. You just feel emotionally flat. Psychology calls this emotional exhaustion. Your brain becomes overstimulated for so long that it starts dulling emotional responses as a protective mechanism. It's similar to emotional overload. Your mind basically says, I can't keep processing this much stress anymore. So instead of panic, you feel detached. This is why burned out people often say, I don't feel like myself anymore. Because emotionally, they aren't functioning at full capacity.
Sign 3. You're resting, but never recovering. One of the biggest signs of burnout is this. You rest, but still feel tired. You sleep longer. You stay in bed. You take breaks. But the exhaustion never fully leaves. That's because burnout is not just physical fatigue. It's nervous system fatigue. And there's a huge psychological difference. Physical tiredness can often improve with sleep. Burnout usually comes from chronic emotional stress, unresolved anxiety, constant mental pressure, emotional suppression, or living in survival mode for too long. So even when your body rests, your brain never truly relaxes. You may notice racing thoughts, constant overthinking, guilt while resting, or anxiety about the future, which means your nervous system remains activated even during rest. This is why burned out people often wake up tired. Their body slept, their mind didn't. Sign 4. You can't focus like you used to. Burnout destroys concentration. You reread the same sentence 5 times. You open apps and forget why. You start tasks but mentally drift away. And eventually, you begin questioning your intelligence. But burnout affects cognitive performance. Psychologists link prolonged stress to reduced attention span, memory problems, and mental fog. Your brain becomes overloaded. Imagine running dozens of apps on a phone until the battery overheats. Eventually, everything slows down. That's what chronic stress does to the mind. And because modern burnout is often mixed with social media overload, constant notifications, pressure to succeed, and comparison culture, the brain rarely gets silence anymore. Your mind isn't weak, it's overstimulated.
Sign 5. You've become irritable and withdrawn. Burnout often changes personality. You become less patient. Small things irritate you. Noise feels overwhelming. And sometimes you isolate yourself completely. Not because you hate people, but because social interaction starts feeling emotionally expensive. Even replying to texts can feel draining. Psychologically, burnout reduces emotional capacity. When your nervous system is overloaded, your tolerance for stimulation becomes smaller. So your brain starts avoiding conversations, responsibilities, conflicts, and emotional demands. This is why burned out people often disappear socially. Not out of arrogance, out of exhaustion. And unfortunately, many people misunderstand this. They think you've changed. But in reality, the person is emotionally depleted. Sign 6. You feel guilty for resting. This is one of the most dangerous signs. You physically need rest, but mentally feel guilty taking it. So even while resting, your mind says you should be doing more. You're wasting time. Everyone else is ahead of you. This usually happens in people whose self-worth became attached to productivity. Maybe growing up, they were praised mainly for achievement. Maybe they learned that being valuable meant constantly performing. So eventually, resting feels unsafe. And psychologically, this creates a cycle. Exhaustion, guilt, overworking, deeper burnout, then even more guilt. The person never truly allows themselves recovery, because slowing down feels like failure. But rest is not laziness. Rest is biological maintenance. Even machines overheat when pushed too long. Human beings are no different. Sign 7. You fantasize about escaping everything. One of the clearest signs of burnout is constantly wanting to disappear. Not necessarily in a dangerous way, but mentally. You fantasize about quitting everything, moving away, turning your phone off, disappearing into silence, or starting life over completely. That urge usually isn't about laziness, it's about overwhelm. Your brain wants relief from constant psychological pressure. Psychologists explain that when stress feels endless and uncontrollable, the mind begins craving escape. Not because you don't care about life, but because life has started feeling emotionally unbearable. And this is important. Burnout doesn't mean you're weak. It usually means you've been strong for too long without proper recovery.
If you related to these signs, there's a good chance you're not lazy. You're exhausted. And there's an important difference. Lazy people usually feel comfortable doing nothing. Burned out people desperately want to feel normal again. They want their energy back, their focus back, their emotions back, themselves back. So stop measuring your worth purely by productivity. You are not a machine. Your mind was never designed to function under endless pressure without consequences. Healing from burnout usually starts with 3 things: rest without guilt, emotional honesty, and reducing the constant pressure to always be on. And most importantly, be careful how you speak to yourself during hard seasons, because exhausted people often become cruel to themselves when they need compassion the most. Maybe you don't need more discipline right now. Maybe you need recovery. And sometimes, understanding that changes everything.